The desert sun was already burning when the little girl appeared outside the Bellagio casino. Worn pink backpack hanging off one shoulder, wild curly hair framing her tearful face, shoelaces dragging on hot asphalt, eyes searching, desperate, terrified. She stopped in front of him. The man every Las Vegas cop refused to arrest. The man the FBI called the Phantom of the Strip. The man whose name made casino owners lock their doors and rival gangs evacuate entire neighborhoods. A mafia boss. He was stepping out of his black Escalade charcoal suit pressed sharp, gold chain catching sunlight, when a small, dirt-smudged hand grabbed his jacket. "Mister," she whispered, voice shaking, "can you please walk me to school? There's a bad man following me. I'm really, really scared." His entire gang froze. His lieutenant, Dante Greco, reached for his gun. His driver's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Even the valet attendants across the street stopped moving, eyes locked on the impossible scene unfolding before them. No one asked Mancinni Rossi for protection. People begged him for mercy, pleaded for extensions on debts they couldn't pay, offered everything they owned to undo mistakes that usually ended with shallow graves in the Nevada desert. But never this. Never safety. He knelt slowly, his voice dropping to a rumble only she could hear. "Why aren't you safe, little one?" The girl Violet Hayes, though he didn't know her name, yet hesitated. Then she pointed across the parking lot with a trembling finger. A man stood beside a silver sedan with tinted windows, hands buried in his pockets, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, a smile that looked more like a predator sizing up prey. Mancinni's pulse kicked once, sharp and cold, because he recognized that face. Alvarez Crane. A trafficker. A monster. A man so vile that even the Las Vegas underworld drug dealers, hitmen, extortionists, refused to do business with him. The kind of evil that made seasoned criminals look away in disgust. Violet's voice cracked again, pulling him back. "I just want to get to school today without him following me. Please." Mancinni Rossi stood up. And what he did next, in broad daylight, on the Las Vegas Strip, in front of tourists, with cameras and security guards and half the city watching, shook the entire criminal underworld and started a war no one saw coming. Stay with me until the end, because the truth behind that little girl's fear and the mafia boss's decision will leave you speechless. Before we begin, like this video and hit the subscribe button to support a small creator, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. Mancinni didn't answer right away. He just looked down at Violet, this tiny, trembling girl in a pink jacket 2 sizes too big, shoes held together with duct tape, eyes still wet with tears, and something inside him cracked. Something he'd buried under 20 years of violence and blood money, and bodies that disappeared into the desert. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Violet," she whispered. Violet. He tested the word like he was handling something fragile. "When does school start?" 8 o'clock. "But I have to leave now or I'll be late." Mancinni straightened up and turned to Dante Greco, his lieutenant, a man who'd helped him bury 17 people and never flinched once. Dante's face had gone pale. "Boss," Dante said carefully, "we have the casino meeting in 20 minutes. Bernardi's already inside waiting. If we're late, reschedule it." "Boss." "I said reschedule it." Mancinni's voice didn't rise, but the air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. He looked at Dante with eyes that had ordered executions without blinking. "Tell Bernardi. Something came up. Something more important." Dante's mouth opened, closed, opened again. In 15 years of working together, he'd never heard Mancinni Rossi call anything more important than territory. Not money, not power, not survival. "You're really doing this?" Dante finally managed. Mancinni didn't answer. He just extended his hand down to Violet. She looked at it for a moment, this hand that had pulled triggers, signed death warrants, broken bones, and then she slipped her small fingers into his palm. The walk to Henderson Elementary School was only 6 blocks. 6 blocks that felt like crossing into another dimension. Mancinni Rossi, the Phantom of the Strip, the man who controlled half of Las Vegas's underground economy. The name whispered in back rooms and police stations and emergency rooms, walked hand in hand with a 7-year-old girl wearing a pink backpack. People stared. Mrs. Martinez, sweeping the sidewalk outside her corner store, dropped her broom. It clattered against concrete, loud in the morning quiet. Jamal, the bus driver waiting at the light, leaned forward until his forehead pressed against the windshield, eyes wide with disbelief. 2 uniformed cops, sitting in a patrol car outside the 7-Eleven, looked at each other, then back at the scene, like they were witnessing something physically impossible. And they were, because Mancinni Rossi didn't protect people. He collected from them, threatened them, made examples out of them when they stepped out of line. But here he was, stopping at the crosswalk on Charleston Boulevard, looking both ways like any other adult walking a child to school. His $1,000 Italian shoes crunching on gravel, his gold Rolex glinting in the desert sun, his other hand resting protectively on Violet's shoulder as a pickup truck rolled past. "You do this walk every day?" he asked her. Violet nodded. "By myself. My grandma can't come with me anymore. She's too sick. And that man, how long has he been following you?" Her voice got smaller. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Mancinni's jaw tightened. 3 weeks this child had been hunted, and no one, not the police, not the school, not a single adult in this neighborhood, had done a damn thing about it. They reached the school gate. Other kids were filing in, backpacks bouncing, voices high with morning energy. Some of them noticed Violet arriving with a tall man in an expensive suit. A few pointed. One girl whispered something to her friend. Violet looked up at him. "Thank you, mister." Mancinni knelt down one more time, meeting her eyes. "Tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "Same time. I'll be here." Her face transformed. Hope, raw and desperate and heartbreaking, flooded across her features. Really? Really? And Mancinni Rossi, who'd broken every promise that mattered, who'd lied to judges and priests and dying men, meant it. Mancinni didn't leave right away. He stood outside the school gate, watching Violet disappear through the double doors, her pink backpack the last thing visible before she merged into the crowd of children. Around him, parents chatted about weekend plans and permission slips, oblivious to the fact that Las Vegas's most dangerous man was standing among them. That's when he saw the silver sedan. Same one from the casino parking lot, parked across the street, engine running, windows tinted so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. Nevada law said window tint couldn't exceed 35% darkness. These were easily 70, which meant either the driver had money to pay off cops, or the cops were already on his payroll. Mancinni's instincts, honed by 2 decades of surviving in a world where hesitation meant death, kicked in immediately. He pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of the license plate. Then he texted it to Dante with 2 words. "Run this, now." The response came back in 40 seconds. Registered to Alvarez Crane. Multiple priors. Human trafficking. Aggravated assault. Witness intimidation. Connected to Detective Raymond Kowalski, LVPD Vice. Mancinni felt something cold settle into his chest. Not fear. He'd stopped feeling fear the day he put a bullet in his first man at 19 years old. This was something worse. Something older. Disgust. Alvarez Crane wasn't just a predator. He was the kind of filth that made even hardened criminals uncomfortable. The kind of man who showed up in police files with charges that got mysteriously dropped, witnesses who suddenly refused to testify, evidence that disappeared from lockup. All because Crane had Detective Kowalski and 3 other cops feeding him information, warning him when investigations got too close, making sure he always stayed one step ahead of consequences. Mancinni had heard the rumors. Everyone in the underworld had. Crane ran a trafficking network that moved through Las Vegas like a ghost, snatching kids from bus stops, playgrounds, school zones. Girls mostly, but boys too. Anyone vulnerable, anyone alone, anyone like Violet. The sedan's engine revved once. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to signal movement. Crane was getting ready to leave, probably circling back later when fewer eyes were watching. Mancinni walked toward the car. Not fast, not aggressive, just a steady, unhurried stride across the street, hands visible, face calm. The kind of walk that said, "I'm not looking for trouble, but I'm not afraid of it either." He stopped 5 feet from the driver's side window. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Just two predators sizing each other up through tinted glass and desert heat. Then the window lowered, slowly, just enough to reveal a face. Alvarez Crane was younger than Mancinni expected, maybe 35, with slicked back hair, a thin scar running through his left eyebrow, and eyes that held absolutely nothing behind them. No anger, no fear, no humanity, just calculation. "Help you with something?" Crane's voice was smooth, almost friendly. "You're watching the school," Mancinni said flatly. "Public street, free country." Crane smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You a parent? You don't look like the PTA type." "I'm the type who notices things." "Yeah?" Crane's smile widened. "Like what?" "Like predators who circled the same hunting ground 3 weeks straight." Mancinni leaned down slightly, his voice dropping into something darker. "Like silver sedans with illegal tint parked outside elementary schools. Like men stupid enough to keep operating after someone notices them." The smile vanished from Crane's face. "You don't know who you're talking to," Crane said quietly. "Alvarez Crane. Trafficking. Protected by Kowalski and Vice." Mancinni's tone didn't change. "I know exactly who I'm talking to. Question is whether you know who I am." Recognition flickered across Crane's face. Then something worse. Not fear. Calculation. "Mancinni Rossi," Crane said slowly. "The Phantom." "That's right." Crane's hand moved slightly, not to a weapon, to his phone. One button press, and Kowalski would know about this conversation. One phone call, and Mancinni would have police problems he didn't need. But Crane didn't press it. Instead, he looked at Mancinni with those empty eyes and said something that made the desert air feel colder. "She's a pretty little thing, isn't she? That girl in the pink jacket." Mancinni's hand shot through the window before Crane could blink, grabbed him by the collar, yanked him forward until their faces were inches apart. "Listen very carefully," Mancinni whispered. "You go near that child again, and Detective Kowalski won't find enough of you to identify." He released Crane and stepped back. The window rolled up. The sedan pulled away from the curb, tires squealing slightly on hot asphalt. But as it disappeared around the corner, Mancinni knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Mancinni sat in his car for 20 minutes after Crane drove away, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. His phone buzzed twice, Dante calling about the rescheduled casino meeting. He ignored it, because all he could see was another little girl, another pair of frightened eyes, another pink jacket. No, not pink, purple. Isabella's favorite color when she was 7. His daughter was 12 now, safe in a private boarding school in Boston, 2,000 miles and a lifetime away from the neon-soaked violence of Las Vegas. She had piano lessons on Tuesdays, field hockey practice on Thursdays, a roommate named Claire who came from old Connecticut money and didn't know what the word Mafia even meant. Isabella sent him letters every week, handwritten on cream-colored stationery, careful cursive that her teachers praised. She told him about books she was reading, about how she'd made the honor roll, about a boy named Marcus who'd asked her to the winter formal, and how she'd said yes because he was really nice and respectful dad. She signed every letter the same way. "I love you. I miss you. Please stay safe." She had no idea what staying safe actually meant in his world. The decision to send her away had nearly killed him. Isabella was 8 when her mother, Mancinni's wife, Sophia, died in a car accident on the I-15. Not mafia business, just bad luck. A drunk driver crossing the median at 70 miles an hour, Sophia died instantly. Isabella walked away with a broken arm and nightmares that lasted 6 months. That's when Mancinni realized the truth. His daughter would never be safe in Las Vegas. Not as long as she was known as his child. Not as long as every rival gang, every vengeful enemy, Every desperate fool looking to send a message knew exactly where to find her. So he did the hardest thing he'd ever done. Harder than his first kill, harder than burying Sophia, harder than anything. He sent Isabella to Boston. To safety, to normalcy, to a life where men like Alvarez Crane didn't exist, where little girls could walk to school without predators circling, where childhood meant innocence instead of survival. But before she left, before the private plane carried her across the country to a world he could never be part of, Mancinni made her a promise. They were sitting in his office, mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with books he'd never read but kept because they made the room look legitimate. Isabella was wearing her purple jacket, the one she refused to take off even though it was June and 95 degrees outside. "Dad," she'd asked quietly, "why do I have to go?" He'd knelt down, just like he'd knelt for Violet that morning, and taken her hands in his. "Because you deserve to be a kid," he'd told her. "You deserve to worry about homework and friends and stupid boys, not about whether someone might hurt you to hurt me." "But what about other kids?" Her voice had been so small. "What about kids who don't have dads who can send them away?" And that's when Mancinni Rossi, a man who'd built an empire on fear and violence and calculated cruelty, made a rule that would define everything that came after. "Anyone who hurts a child," he'd said, looking into his daughter's eyes, "answers to me personally, not my crew, not my soldiers, me. That's a promise, Isabella. No matter what else I do, no matter what kind of man I am, I will never let someone hurt a kid. Not while I'm alive." She'd hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. "You're a good dad," she'd whispered. He wasn't. He knew he wasn't. Good fathers didn't run criminal empires. Good fathers didn't have body counts. Good fathers didn't send their daughters across the country because keeping them close meant signing their death warrants. But he could keep that one promise. And sitting in his car outside Henderson Elementary, watching parents pick up their children, watching Violet's pink backpack disappear through those school doors, Mancinni knew exactly what that promise meant now. It meant Alvarez Crane had just made the last mistake of his life. The next morning, Mancinni was outside Violet's apartment building at 7:45 sharp. Same black Escalade, same charcoal suit, though this time he left the jacket unbuttoned, more relaxed. His gold Rolex caught the early sunlight as he checked the time, then looked up at the third-floor window with peeling paint and a broken air conditioning unit hanging at an angle. Violet appeared in the doorway 2 minutes later, pink backpack already on, shoelaces tied poorly, but tied. Her eyes went wide when she saw him standing there, like she'd half convinced herself yesterday had been a dream. "You came back," she breathed. "I said I would." She ran to him, nearly tripping over her own feet, and grabbed his hand without hesitation, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like his hand wasn't responsible for things that would give her nightmares if she ever knew. They walked, and the neighborhood watched. Mrs. Martinez was outside her corner store again, this time pretending to arrange produce bins while her eyes tracked every step they took. Yesterday she'd dropped her broom. Today she just stared, mouth slightly open, a tomato forgotten in her hand. Jamal sat in his bus, at the same red light, Route 206 to downtown. He saw them coming, and his hands froze on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, Mancinni could see him mouth a single word: "Damn." 2 cops, different ones from yesterday. Younger, were parked outside the Circle K getting coffee. One of them nudged his partner, spilling creamer on his uniform. Both watched Mancinni and Violet cross Charleston Boulevard, hands linked, morning sun turning everything gold. "Is everyone always staring?" Violet asked quietly. "They're not used to seeing me like this." "Like what?" "Being normal." She thought about that for a moment. "You don't seem scary to me." Mancinni almost smiled. "Almost. That's because you asked me for help instead of running away. My grandma says brave people aren't the ones who aren't scared. Brave people are the ones who do the right thing even when they are scared. Your grandma's a smart woman." The walk took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of silent observation from every porch, every window, every passing car. By the time they reached Henderson Elementary, at least 30 people had witnessed Mancinni Rossi, the Phantom of the Strip, the man who controlled half the city's underground, walking a 7-year-old to school like he was her father. It happened again Wednesday morning, 7:45. Same spot, same walk. Mrs. Martinez waved this time, tentatively, like she wasn't sure if acknowledging him was safe. Mancinni nodded back. Thursday morning, Jamal honked his horn, not aggressive, just a quick tap, a greeting. Friday morning, Mr. Thompson, the elderly man who ran the bodega on 5th Street, was sweeping his sidewalk when they passed. He stopped, looked at Mancinni, then spoke for the first time. "Good man," Thompson said quietly, "doing a good thing." By the second week, it wasn't shock anymore. It was routine. Parents started timing their own school walks to coincide with Mancinni's. Not close, nobody was brave enough to walk beside him, but parallel, on the opposite sidewalk, 20 feet back, close enough to be part of something, close enough to witness it. The neighborhood was changing, slowly, subtly, but changing. Because Mancinni Rossi, the man they'd feared for 20 years, the name whispered with dread, the figure who represented everything dangerous about Las Vegas, was showing them something they'd forgotten. That protection didn't have to come with a price. That power could be used for something other than control. That even in the darkest places, someone could choose to be a shield instead of a sword. Every morning at 7:45, his hand on Violet's shoulder, gold watch, catching sunlight, Mancinni walked 6 blocks and rewrote what the neighborhood believed was possible. He never smiled, never waved, never acknowledged the growing crowd of witnesses. He just walked, but that was enough. Mancinni noticed the details on the third morning walk. The way Violet's shoes weren't just old, they were falling apart, soles separating from leather, held together with layers of duct tape that had gone gray with dirt. The way her jacket sleeves stopped 3 inches above her wrists. The way she sometimes winced when she adjusted her backpack, like the weight hurt her shoulders. "Your grandma," he said as they waited at a crosswalk. "What's wrong with her?" Violet's voice got smaller. "The doctors say it's her heart and her lungs. She needs medicine, but it costs too much. Sometimes she skips doses so we can pay for food." "What about your parents?" "My mom died when I was 4. Car accident. I don't remember her much." Violet looked down at her shoes. "My dad's in prison in California. I don't know when he's getting out." Mancinni said nothing, just filed the information away like he was building a case file. By the time he dropped Violet at school, he had everything he needed. That afternoon, Dante Greco walked into Harmon Family Pharmacy on East Desert Inn Road. The pharmacist, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Chen, looked up from her computer, and her face went pale. "We're not looking for trouble," she said immediately, hands raised. "I'm not bringing any." Dante placed a piece of paper on the counter. A name written in Mancinni's handwriting. Maria Hayes. "This woman has prescriptions here. Heart medication, lung medication. What's her current balance?" Patricia's fingers trembled as she typed, $1,463. Dante pulled out a money clip, hundreds, 50s, 20s, all crisp and clean, and counted out 1,500 exactly. He slid the cash across the counter. "That covers the balance. Going forward, whatever she needs, you fill it. Send the bills to this address." He placed a business card down. No name, just a P.O. box number. "You do this, nobody bothers your pharmacy. Nobody shakes you down for protection money. Nobody breaks your windows when you're closed. Understood?" Patricia nodded, still not quite believing what was happening. "One more thing," Dante said. "This conversation never happened. Mrs. Hayes doesn't know where the help came from. She just knows her prescriptions are suddenly free. You tell anyone, police, reporters, your priest, and this deal ends badly. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Good." The next stop was the apartment building on Cambridge Street where Violet lived with her grandmother. The landlord, a man named Gerald Ruskin, who owned 6 properties in the neighborhood and had a reputation for evicting families 2 days after rent, was in his office, reviewing lease agreements, when Dante walked in without knocking. Ruskin looked up, annoyed. Then he saw who was standing in his doorway, and the annoyance turned to something else. "Mr. Greco," Ruskin's voice cracked slightly. "What can I do for you?" "Maria Hayes, Unit 3C. What's she owe you?" Ruskin checked his files with shaking hands. "She's 4 months behind, 3,200 total. I was actually about to start eviction proceedings." "You're not." "I'm sorry?" Dante sat down without being invited, leaned back in the chair, adjusted his cufflinks, let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. "Maria Hayes and her granddaughter," Dante said slowly, "are under protection now. You understand what that means?" Ruskin swallowed hard. "I think so. Let me be clearer. Her rent is forgiven. All of it. Past, present, future. She lives there as long as she wants, free of charge. You fix anything that breaks in that apartment within 24 hours. Heat stops working, you fix it. Toilet clogs, you fix it. Window cracks, you replace it. And you do it with a smile. But I have expenses." "I don't care." Dante's voice didn't rise, but somehow filled the entire room. "You own 6 buildings. You'll survive losing 1 tenant's rent. Consider it an investment in your continued good health." Ruskin opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, finally managed, "And if I refuse?" Dante stood up, straightened his jacket, looked at Ruskin the way a butcher looks at meat. "Then we have a different conversation, one that involves you, me, and a drive into the desert. Your choice." "It wasn't really a choice." "The rent's forgiven," Ruskin whispered. "Smart man." 2 days later, Maria Hayes found a package on her doorstep. No return address. Inside, 3 months' worth of heart medication, lung medication, and a note written in careful block letters. "Taken care of. Don't ask questions." She never did. The attack came on a Tuesday, 3 weeks into the morning ritual. Mancinni was running late. A meeting with a city councilman had gone longer than expected, and for the first time since this started, Violet walked to school alone. She made it 4 blocks before the white van pulled up beside her. It happened fast, too fast for a 7-year-old to process. The side door sliding open, hands reaching out, a voice, Garrett Lynch's voice, rough and impatient, saying, "Get in the van, now." Violet screamed, and the neighborhood exploded. Mrs. Martinez was restocking her produce bins when she heard it. That high, terrified shriek that every parent recognizes as different from playground noise. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. Just grabbed the aluminum baseball bat she kept behind the counter, the one she'd bought after her store got robbed 3 years ago, and ran into the street. "Get away from her!" Martinez was 62 years old, 5 feet tall, grandmother to 4. She swung that bat like she was aiming for the fences, caught Lynch in the shoulder. He stumbled back, cursing. Jamal saw it from his bus stop, saw the van, saw Violet trying to pull away from Lynch's grip, saw Mrs. Martinez swinging her bat like a warrior half her age. He didn't radio dispatch, didn't wait for police, just threw his bus into gear and drove straight at the van, blocking its only escape route. Metal screamed against asphalt as he cranked the wheel, creating a barricade. "Nobody's taking that girl!" he shouted through the open door. Mr. Thompson came next, moving faster than a 78-year-old man should be able to move. He grabbed Lynch's other arm, holding on with hands weathered by 60 years of manual labor. Then came the others. Deshawn, the teenager who worked at the Circle K, still wearing his name tag. Rosa, the waitress from the diner, still holding a coffee pot. The 2 young mothers who'd started timing their walks to match Mancinni's schedule. The construction worker from down the block. The postal carrier who was supposed to be delivering mail 3 streets over. They formed a wall, a human barricade around Violet, bodies pressed close, hands linked, faces set with determination that came from somewhere deeper than courage. It came from something they'd forgotten they had, hope. Lynch tried to push through, tried to intimidate them with his size, his reputation, the gun bulge visible under his jacket, but there were too many. And for the first time in his life, Garrett Lynch, enforcer, kidnapper, predator, felt something he'd never experienced before. Fear. "You're all dead," he screamed, backing toward the van. "Crane will kill every single one of you. You think you're heroes? You're corpses." That's when the black Escalade screeched around the corner. Mancinni was out of the car before it fully stopped, moving with terrifying speed. He saw Violet in the center of the human wall, tears streaming down her face. Saw Mrs. Martinez breathing hard, bat still raised. Saw Jamal's bus blocking the street. Saw his neighborhood, these people who'd spent 20 years crossing the street to avoid him, standing together to protect one little girl. Lynch saw him too, and ran. He made it 3 steps before Mancinni caught him, one hand fisting the back of his collar, yanking him off his feet like he weighed nothing. Lynch hit the pavement hard, nose breaking with a wet crunch. "You made a mistake," Mancinni said quietly, kneeling down so only Lynch could hear. "You came into my neighborhood. You tried to take a child under my protection, and you did it in front of witnesses who finally remembered what it means to fight back. Crane's going to what?" Mancinni's voice dropped to a whisper. "Retaliate? Start a war? Good. I'm counting on it." He stood up, left Lynch bleeding on the asphalt, and walked to Violet. The crowd parted. She threw herself into his arms, small body shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "You were late, and I thought it would be okay. You did nothing wrong." He held her tight. This child who wasn't his daughter, but somehow had become his responsibility anyway. "You hear me? Nothing." He looked up at the faces surrounding them. Mrs. Martinez with her bat, Jamal standing in his bus doorway, Mr. Thompson flexing his arthritic hands, all of them breathing hard, adrenaline still pumping, realizing what they'd just done. "Thank you," Mancinni said. 2 words he almost never spoke, 2 words that carried weight in his world. "All of you." Mrs. Martinez lowered her bat. "That's our girl too now." "Before I tell you what happened next, the retaliation that changed everything, I need you to do something for me. If this story is hitting you in the chest, if you're feeling what these people felt, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Crane declares war. And comment below. Would you have joined that human wall? Would you have stood up? Drop your answer below, because what comes next will test everyone's courage. Now let's continue. The photograph arrived at midnight. Not to Mancinni's phone, Crane was smarter than that. To his private email, the one only 5 people in the world knew existed, which meant Crane had done his homework, had sources, had reach. Mancinni opened it on his laptop in his penthouse office overlooking the strip. The neon glow from the casinos below cast everything in shades of red and gold. He clicked the attachment, and his blood went cold. 3 children, bound with zip ties, blindfolded with black cloth, sitting on a concrete floor in what looked like a warehouse or storage unit. Their mouths weren't gagged. Crane wanted them able to scream, but their faces were turned toward the camera, terror etched into every feature. Clara Washington, 6 years old, wearing the yellow sundress she'd had on when she disappeared from her front yard that afternoon. Isaiah Martinez, 8 years old, Mrs. Martinez's grandson, the boy who helped her stock shelves after school. His Batman shirt was torn at the collar. Jessamine Chen, 5 years old, Patricia, the pharmacist's daughter, the little girl who always waved at Mancinni during the morning walks, shy smile, missing front tooth. Below the photo, a message in red text actually read, like Crane had used editing software to make it look like blood. "You want to play hero? Let's see how many you can save. TikTok, Phantom, every hour you waste, one of them gets closer to disappearing forever. This is what happens when you forget your place." Mancinni stared at the screen for 30 seconds, didn't move, didn't blink, just absorbed every detail. The metal shelving units visible in the background, the oil stain on the concrete floor, the industrial lighting fixture casting harsh shadows, the angle of the photo suggesting it was taken from about 5 feet up. Then he picked up his phone and called Dante. "Get everyone. I don't care what they're doing. I don't care if they're with their families. I want every soldier, every associate, every person who owes me a favor in the conference room in 1 hour. Boss, it's midnight." Did I stutter? Silence. Then, "No, boss. 1 hour." Mancinni forwarded the photo to Dante, heard the sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line when he opened it. Jesus Christ, Dante whispered. Those are neighborhood kids. Isaiah is Maria's grandson. Clara's mom works at the Bellagio. This is war. Mancinni's voice was flat, empty. The voice he used when he'd stopped being human and become something else, something colder. Crane just declared it. Now we finish it. What do you need? Everything. Every warehouse, every storage unit, every property Crane has ever rented or owned. I want Detective Kowalski's home address, his patrol routes, his favorite bar. I want the names of every cop on Crane's payroll. I want to know where he eats breakfast and where he sleeps and where he takes a piss. And I want it in the next 6 hours. Boss? I don't care if it's impossible. Make it possible. Mancinni stood up, looking out at Las Vegas. His city, his territory, his kingdom built on fear and blood money. Crane thinks he can hurt children to prove a point. Thinks he can use innocents as pawns to send me a message. He's about to learn what happens when you cross the only line I have left. He hung up, looked at the photo one more time, memorized every detail. Clara's yellow dress, Isaiah's torn Batman shirt, Jessamine's missing tooth. Then he opened his desk drawer, pulled out something he hadn't touched in 3 years. A Beretta 92 FS, custom grip, 17-round magazine. The gun he'd used for his first kill at 19. The gun he swore he'd never use again after Isabella was born. He checked the chamber. Loaded. Always loaded. Mancinni Rossi, the phantom of the strip, the man who'd built an empire without ever getting his hands dirty anymore, who'd learned to kill with phone calls and money instead of bullets, picked up that gun and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent 20 years becoming legitimate, 20 years building distance between himself and the violence, 20 years pretending he was something other than what he'd started as. But Alvarez Crane had just reminded him of a truth he'd tried to forget. Sometimes the only language monsters understand is violence. And Mancinni Rossi still spoke it fluently. The war was no longer theoretical, no longer preventable, no longer something that might happen if things went wrong. It was here. And it would end with only one man standing. Mancinni didn't go to his war room first, didn't call his lawyers or his fixers or the corrupt officials who owed him favors. He went to an apartment on Oakey Boulevard, 3rd floor, Unit 12B. The kind of building where the elevator was broken more often than it worked, and the hallway smelled like cooking grease and old carpet. He knocked on the door at 1:15 in the morning. Celeste Washington opened it 30 seconds later, eyes red from crying, still wearing her Bellagio housekeeping uniform from the shift she'd just worked. She saw Mancinni standing there, suit jacket, gold watch, face carved from stone, and something broke in her expression. "You know," she whispered. "You know about Clara." "I know. The police said they'd look for her. They took a report, said they'd put out an alert." Her voice cracked. "But I see how they looked at me. Single mom, low-income neighborhood, black daughter. They think she's just another runaway statistic. She's not. How do you—" "Because Alvarez Crane took her." Mancinni said it flat. No cushioning, no gentle delivery. Him and his network. They grabbed 3 kids today. Clara, Isaiah Martinez, Jessamine Chen, all of them from this neighborhood. All of them because I protected Violet Hayes. Celeste stared at him, processing, trying to understand why this man, this terrifying man who everyone whispered about, was standing in her doorway at 1 in the morning, telling her things the police wouldn't say. "This is because of you?" she asked slowly. "Yes." "Because you walked that little girl to school?" "Yes." Celeste's hands clenched into fists. Her whole body started shaking. Mancinni waited for the anger, the blame, the accusation that he'd brought this evil into their lives. He'd earned it. Deserved it. But what came out of her mouth wasn't rage. "Can you find her?" Mancinni looked at this woman, exhausted, terrified, barely holding herself together, and saw every parent's worst nightmare written across her face. Saw what he'd felt when Isabella was 8, and he realized she'd never be safe as long as she was near him. "I will find her," he said. "But I need you to understand what that means." "What does it mean?" "It means I'm going to war. Real war. Not business disputes or territory negotiations. War that ends with bodies and blood and consequences that last years." He paused. "It means I'm putting every resource I have into finding these children. Every soldier, every informant, every dirty cop I own, every favor anyone's ever owed me. And it means when I find Crane, what happens to him won't be clean or legal or something you'll want to think about." Celeste met his eyes, held them. "I don't care what you do to him. I care about my daughter." "I know. So why are you here? Why are you telling me this, instead of already looking for her?" Mancinni took a breath. Did something he'd only done once before in his life, for Isabella, before he sent her to Boston. He knelt, right there in the doorway of a cramped apartment in a building he'd normally never set foot in. Mancinni Rossi went down on one knee, placed his right hand over his heart, and looked up at Celeste Washington with eyes that had witnessed 20 years of violence but had never made a promise like this. "I swear on my daughter's life," he said quietly, "that I will bring Clara home to you. I will find her, and Isaiah, and Jessamine. I will bring them back alive and safe, or I will die in the attempt." That's not a business promise. That's not a negotiation. That's a blood oath. "Do you understand what that means in my world?" Celeste's voice was barely a whisper. "You're betting everything. Everything. My reputation, my organization, my life. All of it goes toward finding those kids." He stood up. "But I needed you to know that I accept responsibility for this. Crane took your daughter because I interfered with his hunting ground. That makes this my fault, and I pay my debts." A tear rolled down Celeste's cheek. She's 6 years old. She still sleeps with a nightlight. She's afraid of the dark. "I know. Please." The word came out broken, desperate. "Please bring my baby home." Mancinni reached into his jacket, pulled out a card, his personal cell number handwritten on the back. "You call this number any time, day or night, and I answer. You want updates? You get them. You want to know every single thing we're doing? I tell you. No secrets, no protection from the ugly truth. You're her mother. You deserve to know everything." Celeste took the card with trembling hands. Mancinni turned to leave, then stopped, looked back. "One more thing. When this is over, when Clara's home safe, you can hate me if you want. You can blame me. You can tell the whole neighborhood that I brought hell into their lives. I'll accept that. But right now, I need you to believe that I will move heaven and earth to fix this." "I believe you," Celeste said, and somehow, impossibly, Mancinni could tell she meant it. The conference room filled by 2:30 a.m. 47 people, soldiers, enforcers, associates, informants, men who'd killed for Mancinni. Men who'd laundered his money, intimidated his enemies, buried his secrets. They sat in leather chairs around a mahogany table, confused about why they'd been summoned in the middle of the night. Mancinni stood at the head of the table, didn't sit, just looked at each face, one by one, letting the silence build until it became uncomfortable. 3 children were taken today, he said finally. Clara Washington, age 6. Isaiah Martinez, age 8. Jessamine Chen, age 5. Taken by Alvarez Crane as retaliation for my protection of Violet Hayes. Murmurs rippled through the room. Someone in the back, a soldier named Marcus, spoke up. "Boss, with respect, why are we here? Crane's a trafficker. Scum. But he's not our business. We don't deal in kids. Never have." "You're right," Mancinni said. "We don't. Which is exactly why we're here." More confused looks. "For 20 years, Mancinni continued, I built this organization on one principle: profit over everything. We controlled territory because it made money. We eliminated rivals because they threatened our income. We paid off cops because it protected our operations. Everything was business. Everything was calculated. He pulled out his phone, projected the photo of the 3 bound children onto the screen behind him. The room went silent. "This is what business looks like when you have no soul," Mancinni said. "This is what happens when profit is the only value. When we look the other way because something isn't our problem. Crane exists because men like us, men like me, decided that as long as he wasn't competing with our operations, we didn't care what he did." Dante shifted in his seat. "Boss, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I was wrong." Mancinni's voice didn't waver. "I built an empire by being worse than everyone else, by being colder, more ruthless, more willing to do whatever it took. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that there are lines that should never be crossed, that some evils are so dark they demand response, profit or not." He looked at the faces around the table, saw confusion, skepticism, fear. 3 weeks ago, a 7-year-old girl asked me to walk her to school. One request, one small act of basic human decency. And you know what happened? The neighborhood changed. People who'd spent years avoiding eye contact started waving. Mothers started walking parallel routes. "Mr. Thompson told me I was doing a good thing." Marcus spoke again. "So you want us to find the kids? Rescue mission. We can do that?" "No." Mancinni shook his head. "I want more than that. I want to burn Crane's entire operation to the ground. Every warehouse, every safe house, every corrupt cop on his payroll, every person who ever helped him snatch a child. I want them all to understand that this city, our city, is no longer safe for predators." "That's not business," another voice said. "That's vendetta." "You're right. It's not business." Mancinni leaned forward, hands flat on the table. "It's something better. It's a choice. We can keep being what we've always been, criminals who take but never protect. Or we can become something this city actually needs, something those 3 kids need, something Violet needs." "And what's that?" Dante asked quietly. "A shield instead of a sword." The room erupted, voices overlapping, arguments about risk and exposure, and throwing away everything they'd built for sentiment. Mancinni let them talk, let them voice every objection. Then he raised one hand, and the room fell silent. "Anyone who doesn't want to be part of this can leave. Right now. No consequences. No hard feelings. Walk out that door, and tomorrow morning, we're still good." He paused. "But if you stay, you're all in. This stops being about money. This becomes about making sure that when parents send their kids to school, they come home safe. That mothers like Celeste Washington don't spend nights wondering if their daughter is alive." No one moved. "I swore on my daughter's life that I'd bring those kids home," Mancinni said. "Now I'm asking you to help me keep that promise. Not because I'm paying you, not because you owe me, but because it's the right thing to do." Silence stretched. Then Marcus stood up. "I got a niece," he said quietly. 7 years old. Lives in Phoenix with my sister. Every time I see her, I think about what kind of world I'm leaving for her." He looked at Mancinni. "Tell me what you need." One by one, the others stood. 47 people. 47 commitments. And Mancinni realized something that had taken 3 weeks and 3 kidnapped children to understand. He'd spent 20 years making Las Vegas fear him. Now he was going to make it trust him. The Phantom of the Strip was dead. The Protector was born, and Alvarez Crane's war had already been lost, he just didn't know it yet. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of Mancinni's transformation from feared phantom to protector, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, smash that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this, stories about redemption and courage and people choosing to be better than their past. Second, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what happens next, the hunt for Crane, the rescue mission, the final confrontation is coming soon, and you don't want to miss a single moment of this war for Las Vegas's soul. Third, and this is the most important one, comment below and tell me, would you have had the courage to join that human wall? Would you have stood up to protect Violet when Lynch came for her? Or would fear have kept you silent? Drop your honest answer below. I read every single comment. And here's my question for you. Do you believe people like Mancinni can truly change? Can a man built from violence and darkness become something good? Or is redemption just a story we tell ourselves? Share this video with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to choose differently, that power can protect instead of destroy, that even the coldest heart can thaw when a child asks for help. This is just the beginning. The war is coming. The rescue mission is next. And Mancinni Rossi is about to show Alvarez Crane why you never, ever threaten children in his city. Stay dangerous, stay compassionate, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk a scared little girl to school. I'll see you in the next chapter.